Welcome to the State of the Nation weekly update. Just a quick reminder before we kick off, please subscribe to the channel. It's great to have you on board. We love to see your comments below. Like, share, the whole lot. It all helps us to grow and to bring you more information and better stuff. So what we're going to talk about this week is we've had a couple of weeks of the Madlanga Commission and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Commission, and it's been covered left, right and centre, including by us on our Political Insider channel, where we give daily updates as to what was said. But I want to do a recap. I want to have a look at the important stuff, as well as what it's looking like will happen in the aftermath of these commissions. Right? And I've got my friend over here to always remind us that this book was written by Jeff Wicks, Shadow State. It was why Babita Deokaran had to die. And let's never forget what we're dealing with here. We're not just dealing with dodgy politicians and criminal syndicates. We're dealing with people who have died. We're dealing with money that's been stolen from hospitals. This isn't a political issue. This is an issue for all of us in South Africa. These people have robbed all of us. This is our tax money that was set aside for the people who are most vulnerable, and people with Lamborghinis have stolen that money. So let's have a look at where we are now. Let's a quick recap. What is this commission about? Well, there was the establishment of a political killings task team when a whole lot of people, politicians, in KZN started to kill each other, usually for positions, and it was decided that this should be investigated. Very good of them to decide to investigate crime, but important. Very nice for them to do it. Anyway, they have this political killings task team centered in KZN, and it starts to do investigations and finds out that there's a link between political killings and crime syndicates. And they follow the lead all the way through and find out that this story is way bigger than what was originally thought. This wasn't a few thugs, a few taxi drivers that steal stuff or kill people. No, in fact, this goes through to mega mansions in the leafy northern suburbs of Johannesburg with the complicity of politicians. Right, so as we know, General Mchunu tries very hard to get anybody to take him seriously when he says, guys, we're onto a big thing here. Eventually, he goes and he makes quite a spectacular address on the 6th of July, dressed in fatigues, tells the whole world how there's this bad bunch of people there, and they want to shut us down because we are unearthing it. So the president calls for a commission of inquiry into these allegations. Looking pretty stupid, Parliament, who are meant to be the custodians and the protectors and the people we pay to look after our interests in Parliament and politically, they've obviously done nothing about it. They decide to arrange a parallel ad hoc committee meeting. Now, just briefly, what's the difference between the two, and why did Parliament feel the need to have an ad hoc committee meeting scheduled? It's because different things can happen. The biggest fear with a commission of inquiry is what we've seen before, and that is the president gets a beautiful document at the end. It gets passed over in a ceremony. There's photos of smiling president, and we've had this for the last 5 presidents, right, where they get the findings of the commission of inquiry, and then I think they've got a special shredding machine that then shreds the finding of that commission, and none of it sees the light of day. We have seen how many commissions into the arms deal, into state capture. Nobody who was at the helm of this ends up going to jail. That was the fear with the Madlanga Commission, because that is established by the president, and the president can then die with the results, which is kind of what we've seen presidents do. Parliament a bit different. This is answerable to Parliament, and nobody has a majority in Parliament. Going to be very hard for Parliament to hide the findings of their own committee meeting. That is the importance of Parliament, and in many ways the one commission is driving the other, which is driving the other, and hopefully we get to the bottom of this. So what is the bottom of this? Well, the bottom of this is that our police minister, Senzo Mchunu, at the time, decides to disband in this task team. There were many schools of thought. There were people that said these were a heavy-handed bunch of thugs involved in extrajudicial killings, spent money recklessly, bought 120 million rands worth of properties for no real reason, used it as their own personal slush fund, sort of took priority over everything, but didn't actually end up arresting anybody of consequence. So there were question marks around the political killings task team, let's be fair, but at least somebody was doing something. So quite instantly, the idea of somebody trying to catch bad guys in South Africa was quite unique to us South Africans, because generally speaking, we haven't seen that in decades. But the police minister decided to disband them, and then the questions start to arise. He does it without telling anybody. He does it on New Year's Eve. Right now, South Africa shuts down New Year's Eve, and there we go. New Year's Eve of 31st of December 2024. No more political killings task team. He has explained it as the police needing to restructure, which is very true. The police seem to be a mess, and we'll deal with that a little bit later. But why do it like that? Why not get us all to buy into the new structure? Why not tell your top brass that you're going to close this thing down? Instead, the only people that seem to know about it were the criminals that were being investigated by the political killings task team. So many questions got raised as to why this happened and when this happened. Right. Let's have a look at the police, because the police are central to this whole collapse. As we know, the police are, to use that word that we love in South Africa, completely and utterly captured. And they are captured by design. We know that law and order has set very uncomfortably with ANC governance. Right? ANC, those liberation movement roots run deep. And when you're fighting a liberation struggle, there are no laws. Laws are illegitimate by design. And the ANC have proven themselves to be absolutely not committed to the rule of law. Every single administration we have had has had their scandals, and every single time the president of the time has chosen to look the other way. From Nelson Mandela, with the whole Serafina debacle, to Thabo Mbeki with his arms deal, to Jacob Zuma with state capture, to Kgalema Motlanthe, who closed down the Scorpions, and Cyril Ramaphosa, we have had president after president that is hardly, one would say, committed to fighting crime. So the police have never been structured in a way that makes sense. Right? Where one arm does one thing and another. I mean, their claim to fame was, as I say, closing down everything that works. So we had the Scorpions that was working, close them down. We had special units that were effective, close them down. Why? Because in many cases, the criminals were known to the politicians. And it's just easier to not enforce the law. So the police remain in this terrible state. What is the problem with the police? Quite clearly, they seem to go out of their way to find the worst leaders. We currently have a police commissioner, Fani Maumela, who seems to be a nice enough chap, but he doesn't look like he's going to win the leadership Olympics. You've got a very bad structure. As I said, there's no real sort of understanding, and you've got habitual political interference into the police. Right? We even heard the police commissioner saying that the instruction to close this unit shouldn't have come from the police minister. It's a police function. It should have come from him. And yet he acceded to this instruction, even though in his own opinion, the instruction was illegal. So, boy, do we need to re-look in the aftermath of this at the structure of the police. And now we've got the police seemingly split into two camps. And depending on which side of the bed you get out of, one side looks better than the other side. It's true. There are some better parts to the policing grouping that seems to be developing, which is Mchunu together with maybe the support of Maumela and maybe the support of this guy Dumisani Khumalo, who was the head of intelligence, and maybe backed by the president, who knows, that actually want to put a few people in jail, which we will grab. Do they want to put everybody in jail? Absolutely not. Are they clean? Definitely not. This General Khumalo we mentioned, who gave testimony at the Madlanga Commission and seemed like a real stand-up guy, was the same guy who employed somebody totally wrong for the job, somebody known to him, the daughter of a colleague who's up for murder in Limpopo, who had never been in the police force, and he employs her as a brigadier in intelligence. She had worked for BMW. So what I'm saying is that there is no way that the good guys are all that good. They were involved in extrajudicial killings. When they didn't like what somebody was said, they were not beyond using strong-arm tactics. On the other side of the scale, you've got a successive bunch of policemen that are beholden to police ministers that come from deep in the roots of KZN, that seem to be only concerned with protecting criminals. And here we go back to Nathi Mthethwa, the recently deceased former Minister of Police, who was known for his political interference in the police. Bekele, who was known for his hat. He was a known collaborator with criminals. He stayed in Kat Matlala's penthouse. I mean, yeah, he phoned the guy 10 times on the day he was being arrested. So in the bad Olympics, these guys win. They wouldn't really want to do anything that would have the crime syndicates arrested. But we've got these two camps, and we need to do something about it. Let's talk about the politicians. Well, as the president so rightly said at the Zondo Commission, it seems like the ANC is accused number one. Yes, Mr. President. And accused number one all the way to accused number 200, because they are a criminal organization that masquerades as a political party. And everybody involved here is linked to the party, who ran the criminal justice system as their fiefdom, and they were not above getting involved with these criminal syndicates. Right? Now, this is unlike state capture, the current problem that we have at the moment with this Madlanga Commission, the allegations of Mchunu. If we go back to the state capture days and the Zondo Commission, one could at least point to a few ANC higher-ups that found a conscience. We remember Pravin Gordhan, we remember Derek Hanekom, that at least stood up against state capture and paid with their jobs. Here, we've got worse capture of the state, and not one higher up in the ANC has moved to condemn it. We heard not a word from the president until Mchunu came out and said it. Mashatile, oh my Lord, he's gone silent. We haven't seen him, our deputy president, or heard from him. Even within the ANC, Mbalula, he found his jaw once. And what happened? The person he accused said, actually, I remember when your wife was involved in a corrupt deal. So he's been quiet about crime as well. Gwedi Mantashe, well, he's not going to talk about crime. We know about him from the Zondo Commission. So this particular inquiry is not carrying one person who has actually fought on behalf of the citizens of South Africa, not one politician. Here we are dealing completely with people that are in league with the criminal syndicates. Okay, so that's understanding where the politicians stand. There's some question marks. Obviously, we've got some people within the Mkhonto Sizwe party that were deeply implicated in the Zondo Commission hearings, and their names have even started to come up here, but we'll wait and see. We did see Julius Malema running interference early on in the parliamentary ad hoc committee meetings, where he seemed to be determined not to let the thing start. But once it started, he's been possibly one of the most effective members of that ad hoc committee. Right, which leads us to these crime syndicates that we speak of. Now, you must understand what we've learned, but we don't know the details, is that there's 5 major crime syndicates, apparently. We know 3 prominent names that we've heard so much that we don't know the one from the other anymore. We've heard of Cat Matlala. This guy seems to have had his fingers in every pie, and he was making a fortune, despite the fact that he's been a career criminal. Career criminal that gets a 360 million rand tender from the police to do health checks on policemen. I'm not making that up, that's the truth. This is a guy who tries to kill his mistress, which was his fatal mistake, because he ends up getting arrested and his phone ends up being taken away, and that's most of the evidence. Right? And the police minister is trying to warn him that they're going to come and arrest him. This is the truth. Then we've got Katie Malefi, another one. His name comes up a lot. And then, of course, Hungwani Morgan Maumela, who the president has done some gymnastics to try and prove he doesn't know, despite the fact that many years ago he was married to Maumela's aunt, the president, that is. And he lives a couple of 100 meters away from him, and he's been caught on video with the guy a couple of times. And he claims he doesn't really know the guy. But this guy's a beauty, because when his building was raided, there were 5 Lamborghinis that were taken away, all in the same color. It is wealth of a scale that has to be seen to be believed. We don't know if those are the 3 crime syndicate leaders. One would imagine they are different sizes, etc. We don't know who the other 2. They talk about 5. We've only heard those names as far as leaders of these syndicates come on. And the one thing that links them all is Babita Deokaran and her whistleblowing on Tembisa Hospital. When she got gunned down in her driveway for blowing the whistle of corruption on Tembisa Hospital, Jeff Wicks wrote a book about it. The numbers were there for all to see. The Gauteng Health Department, whose money it was, said nothing. The health minister said nothing. The minister of finance said nothing. Okay, that's where we sat with us. Now, the question, of course, comes, if you have got this great idea as to how you can steal money from one government hospital, and you know everybody involved, because these things are done provincially, so the same people that pay the bills for Tembisa Hospital are paying the bills for Charlotte Makeke or Chris Hani Baragwanath. You don't think you'd have a go at those hospitals? They've got bigger budgets. We'll wait and see. We also know that these syndicates were involved in drug trafficking and human trafficking and assassinations, but those details haven't come up yet. They will come up. Okay, so we know who the problem with the police. We know that the politicians, especially within the ANC, will do very little, and we know something about the crime syndicates. We also understand just how integrated the crime syndicates were in the politics. These guys literally had fixers on the inside that were passing information between the politicians and the criminal syndicates. They knew before the generals that this task team was being shut down. The criminals knew. Right. The criminals were asking government officials to expedite payments, and it was being done. And they were paying commissions for that. We know all of this. So we've got a few names. So what happens now? Well, a couple of things. If you are waiting for arrests of prominent politicians, wait on. You get that out of your mind. It's not going to happen. It's not the ANC's way of doing things. They never hold anyone to account, unless they're a minor figure. We've seen a couple of suspensions. We love suspensions, especially suspensions on full pay. So some health head of department in Gauteng has been suspended. The Inspector General of Crime Intelligence has been suspended. We don't know why. We don't know for how long. We don't know why, if they've done something illegal, why they haven't been charged. So the ANC is going to try and kick the can down the road. But something else is happening. And that is that we've seen a mobilization within two different sectors. We're seeing a mobilization within certain parts of the state that have been shown up to not be doing their job, and it's not, in this political climate, very helpful to be a friend of crime. So suddenly we saw the SIU, the Special Investigative Unit, start taking people's assets that have stolen money. We haven't seen people going to jail. Let's set that aside. There's still, at the moment, that political coverage for those people, that protection that comes from politicians. We've seen the hawks suddenly start doing a little bit more than what they were doing. We've even started to see the police doing a little bit of policing, right? Stung by action. I mean, the only one you're not going to see any action from is Shamila Batoy. We know that Shamila Batoy is just counting her days to retirement. So let's not expect too much there. But we will start seeing more action because the landscape has changed. We are better informed. We understand what should happen. We understand who the criminals are and who's helping them. So we are going to gradually, sort of begrudgingly, whether we like it or not, start seeing some action from these policing different bodies within the police. So I would say very, very slowly, the rock is going to start rolling just a little bit. It will happen. It's happening already. Okay. Do I expect major arrests? That'll be the last thing they will do, because it's the one thing that they'll have political pressure to not do, and that is to not arrest people. So you have this crazy situation where Maumela, I should say, Morgan Maumela, they go and they take his Lamborghinis, they take his art, but the guy still walks the street. Okay, so let's not get too excited that anybody's going to go to jail anytime soon. But the other part of South Africa that's been mobilized has been the voters. And I think that much like we saw in 2024 at the general election, which was done in the aftermath of the Zondo Commission, where the ANC went from 57% support down to 40% support. The outcome of the Madlanga Commission and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Commission could halve their support again. They could become a political irrelevance in this country. We are going to see we are seeing it already. Once again, I'm going to say this again. So in the comments, I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, when are people going to go to jail? Or when's something going to happen? Something is happening already. The ANC lost a ward in a by-election in Soweto. The ANC lost a ward in the Northwest Province, which has been as safe as houses for years. We are starting to see movement. That movement is going to gain traction. When the electorate and political parties start seeing what people are responding to, they may even change the way they operate. You may not see these dirty politicians anymore because they realize, well, to a far lesser extent, when they realize voters are going to punish me when I do this. We are seeing that change already. Let's understand, in wrapping this up, that people die as a result of this. Children get hooked on nyaupe and they rob their grandmothers as a result of this. This isn't a book entry. This has got real cost. People have ended up dead in their own driveways because of this. This has been a big thing. I hope I've summed it up for you enough for now. We'll keep doing this from time to time when you need to be kept up to date as to what's going on within this commission. Let's thank our sponsors. Pace Car Rental, sponsor us, keep us on air. Go rent a car there, use the code SONA, S-O-N-A, and get a discount. And we'll see you again on the weekly update. Thank you so much for joining me.